we feel problems in science. Still we are unable, we say science in India, but we are not doing science in a proper way, because whatever things are there we are unable to understand, because it is not our own language. Even it is not English, it is from different, either from Greek or from Latin. That's why at first we convert from Latin or Greek to English, and then in Hindi, only then we are able to understand it, isn't it? So this is science as a Latin word, its meaning is knowledge. Now, how you will gain knowledge? What is knowledge? What is science? A body of knowledge derived from observation and experimentation. When we see something, you might have heard, initially a theory was proposed, that was geocentric theory. Later on, heliocentric theory. And now people say even sun also rotates around Milky Way, isn't it? So initially people observed that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. On that basis, they gave a theory, that is geocentric theory. Earth is in the center and sun rotates around it. Later on people found no, Earth rotates around the sun. Then another theory was heliocentric theory. So when we say a body of knowledge derived from observation, only observation is not sufficient for to generate the knowledge. For that, what is required? Experimentation. The body of knowledge derived from observation and experimentation. Another thing is a process of mind that is imaginative, creative and social. When we think something, at first we do imagination, and then we try to make it, or we try to prove it, and that creation should be useful. As you might have heard about atom bomb, Alfred Nobel created the destructive thing. It is not considered as scientific discovery, because it should be social, and that's why whatever he earned, donated. Those who will do creative discovery, for them he donated. Another is systematic and regular study. These are important points in science. When we study arts, history, civics, geography, what we do? We study, whatever chapter we study, we understand about it. But in science, if you are not systematic and regular, if you are absent in the first class, or in the second class, or third class, you will not understand further classes, because all classes are interlinked. In science, when we study, if we do not know about cells, we cannot understand tissues. If we do not understand tissues, we cannot understand organs. If we are unable to understand cell membrane, we cannot understand cell signaling. We cannot understand cell physiology completely. That's why there is need of systematic and regular study. Only then you can understand science. Now, questions in science. There are only 3 questions. Some more questions. Where? What? It is very easy. You can say it very easy. How? You will have to give a little bit more explanation. And why it is very difficult? You will have to prove it. That's why. Now, how you will study science? What is required? So there are 5 steps of scientific study. The work of a scientist, or the method of study of a science student, is like the work of the police, or the investigation by the police. What happens if someone kills or a criminal kills a person, you might have heard at first the police observe the site where the crime has happened, and then he tried to derive a conclusion. Initially he develops hypothesis. Who might have killed him? He asks many persons. So there, like that, at first there is careful observation. In science, at first you have to observe things. Then logical reasoning. You have to think about it, and then formulation of hypothesis. When you do logical reasoning, when you have sufficient, when you observe things, you generate data, and you do logical reasoning, you think over it, then you make a hypothesis. Whatever data you have, your hypothesis may be right or may be wrong. You will have to prove it. Your hypothesis is right or wrong. For that you will have to do experimental verification. By experimental verification, you can say your hypothesis is right or your hypothesis is wrong. Then formulation of theory. When many times experiment is repeated and you get the same result, then your hypothesis is converted into theory. And when it is unchangeable, then it becomes law or principle. You might have this geocentric theory, heliocentric theory. These are called theories because there is some modification. One thing is constant, there is movement, but the movement of the body is different. Different bodies move according to the. So in the theory there is chance of modification, but in the law or principle there is no chance of modification. You might have heard Newton's laws of motion or Newton's law of gravitation, isn't it? There is no any chance of modification. Only then it is principle. Now, careful observation. What is it? The ability to notice something, keeping records and giving answers to questions framed by an observer. This is your careful observation. When you observe a thing, many things happen around us, but we do not pay proper attention. Many people might have seen the falling of mangoes or apples, but the law of gravitation was given by Newton. Why? Why so? Because only he thought, he observed it carefully, and then he did logical reasoning, and that's why he could be able to give a particular law about it. Isn't it? So that is, particularly Indians are very weak in it. In keeping records, we are very weak. That's why our science, whatever we put, we keep in our brain only. And along with that person, it goes. So in science, this is very important. Noticing something, then keeping something, and on that basis, you give answers to other questions of the observer. Now, logical reasoning. What is it? The process to discuss the observed things in own mind. Something, whatever you observe, you think. Actually, once I was teaching, perhaps in your class. At that time, Anand asked me, Kisha, the DNA in the sperm is in the Z form. Why so? At that time I did not know its answer. You might have seen I explained it, isn't it? On what basis I explained it? I did logical reasoning. In the case of sperm, there is a large amount of cytoplasm is discarded, and there is change in the salt concentration. That's why it becomes